company blocked arteries. Get your Extendivite today.
The way that the monotheistic Abrahamic system tries to permeate and
This is Truth Frequency Radio.
The wicked ones obviously under heavy Masonic influence.
all right. Bear with me. Okay, I think we're on the air. There we are. We are on air. Sorry about that. Little bit of a hiccup to start. My apologies. What's up, guys? It is Zerilath. You are listening to TFRLive.com. It is 6 p.m. on the East Coast Sunday night, which means it's one thing. It is Trigenesis with Zerilath. How's it going, guys? Tonight, I have my guest that I was telling you guys about last week. If you listened to any of the show anywhere, I did an overview of his material in lieu of his absence, and talked about some tertiary stuff to it, because some of it's like visual components, or like listening to a divination where you kind of need to like look at the cards that he's talking about to get the better reference point. So I could only find so much that was like radio worthy on the spot. But I knew what I was doing. But I went over the subject matter to rehash it here. So this is my buddy Raven Wulfgar. I was on the Greyhorn Pagans podcast a few months ago, and that's how I met Stein. And I was kind of like visiting as part of a panel, getting to know each other. I think he knew I was part of the Spiders, the Weave, and that was about it. And then Raven popped up into a thing, and then I said something about role-playing games, and then you wouldn't stop talking, and I realized, oh, I'm a gamer. So we became fast friends once I realized what he was, what he knew, and it's just like, I love people that know gaming, but know it on the level that has the occult transfer, from somebody who's like on wavelength. You're not hanging out with the Greyhorn Pagans and the people in that orbit unless you passed the test of the last few years. And so, I love building that network of associations, and I'm honored to know you. I'm honored that you adopted my divination style and gave me shout outs on your channel. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing, because quite honestly, some of the techniques that you used, I was like, that is really interesting, and it made a lot of sense just right there at the start. So I was like,
yeah,
let me try that and see if it might work for me. And there have been times where I remember to do it and it works. It works really well. It provides a very clear picture. And, there are times where I just space and forget to even try it that way. And, definitely not a knock on you at all. It was very eye-opening seeing how you do it. I love watching other people do their oracle work, because that oracular work is so interesting and it's so varied from individual to individual.
Yeah. Everybody's got very different styles. I find it like I may struggle from not having that particular gift of like having like the ability to like put out like a weekly reading. Like the main reason why I keep just putting it off is that my energy field feels like this reading's gonna feel just like the readings that you were doing for like 3 weeks straight, like a month ago or so. Like, and it was just like, because I didn't want to be like, no offense to all the other very talented tarot readers out there, but where they're kind of going through this whole thing, and the readings all kind of mush together in a certain way when you're trying to give these universalized readings and you're trying to churn them out for the YouTube algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
And
one of the things I've noticed
it doesn't work unless you've made a mechanical formula that doesn't matter if the divine inspiration is really pulling through the richest message. Like, that's me, right? That's my operation.
Right. And one of the things that I've noticed was this has kind of been the strangest thing. Like when I first started this, the messages would come through those cards, through the meditation before, but it always happened in the moment. Now these days, the little messages are coming to me. They're coming through like various sources. I could be just going through some YouTube shorts and something will pop out and it will be like not loud as in volume, but it'll be amplified straight to me.
Yeah.
And it'll sit there ringing in my head, and I'm like, why? At first I was like, why am I remembering this? And then the reading will suddenly bear it out, and I'm like, oh, okay, now it's making sense. Mm-hmm. So, having those meditations days ahead, you may be delivering a very similar message, but the fact of the matter is there's new detail in there, and that's detail someone else may need to know. Maybe they're feeling like this is kind of the same old, but once they spot that one little thing that they may have missed, suddenly they're off on a new path.
For sure. Yeah, and I think a lot of people are more inspired by having, the ability to throw those drops out there because of the utility that the Norns use with a divinator in the medium, especially if they're going to throw it like chaos painting. Let me just throw the paint on the wall and see what works.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, no, like I said, it's definitely not to be a knock on anybody who is trying to succeed on YouTube by cranking them out every single week. I mean, look, as long as you're being yourself, and you genuinely are trying to be of service to others, then all power to you.
Yeah, it definitely has to be in one of those authentic messages. I mean, mine are mostly like they're very general, but this, the readings I do are sort of the equivalent of I don't know who needs to hear this, but, and then whoever watches it, I do my best to tailor it to the person who's watching it. It's not all 270 of my YouTube subscribers or however many subscribe here or there. It's just whoever's watching it. If you're watching it, there's probably something in there you need. And it may not be the whole thing. You could just take one element. If that thing changes, your mindset and helps you accomplish your outcome, I'm happy.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And that's always part of my thing too. And like sometimes I just have the ability because, I've read a reasonable amount of Jung and other esoteric works of psychology and philosophy, currently going through Heidegger, Martin Heidegger's Being and Time, which that's definitely going to crack my my divination game open as I go, because I'm already getting the point as Dasein is sticking. But anyway, like when you end up when you up yourself in the divination practice by the merit of always being hungry for the richest of prime gnosis, right? And then being able to translate that to whomever your audience or client is, knowing the language that they speak and getting it across.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing: not every reading is going to be this fantastic thing telling you, "Hey, you're about to win the lottery today." A lot of them, even when they turn up bad or they turn up pretty dire, they're usually like signs in the road. Like, hey, you're heading in a bad direction. It's probably, the cliff's on the way. You might want to cut the wheel and apply the brake. That would be a great idea. There are people out there. I'm not really sure what their deal is, but there are people out there that just seem to have this incapability to themselves, that they always think, I can't do that. And it's like, well, which is worse, facing the unknown or facing, certain destruction here, because that's where you're headed. At least with the unknown, you stand a chance. You stand a fighting chance, and that's what I'm here to tell you. I'm not here to tell you things are going to be bad. I'm telling you things are going to be bad if you continue down this course.
Right.
But take a step off and see what happens. And that,
right.
Sometimes those warning signs, they're difficult. They're really tough to have to deliver. But it's like, again, with the authenticity. If I'm going to deliver good news to you, I have to be able to deliver news that things might not be so great.
Yeah. That's why, I try to, I try to live that way anyway. Just like, okay, as a divination person, to be honest with them, which is the only way I'm going to help them. If I know intuitively that the context of the spread is telling me bad news, I have to be able to transmute that into constructive criticism, where I can look them dead in the eye and tell them, listen, man, you just need to lose 200 pounds, okay? Right. Yeah. So, that's obviously, if I'm sitting across from a client and there's certain things going on, right? Plus, you're not, a person pays you. You don't want to be rude to them. Like I said, you're serving them, right?
Yeah.
But good humor, right? Just to make sure, because we're being serious, but I always throw a joke in there. It's... my Uranus is annoyingly placed, so just have fun with me. Yeah, and it's been wild, because I had known about divination and things like that for many a year prior, as I was going through research and study of things like psychic abilities and meditation and all this stuff. I had to tap a lot of New Age resources before I found heathenry to get there, and had to deconstruct things and then find out what the heck I was looking for, especially when I was starting to break away from the tropes and the psychological operation that is the way that the monotheistic Abrahamic system tries to permeate and teach you to think like a certain people that you have no claim to.
Yeah.
And all this nonsense where you just don't want to. You're not trying to be mean to anybody, but you just gotta be you. What about you? How did you come into the occult? How did you come into the occult?
Love toward another person. When you can convey that, when you're looking at another person, especially let's say it's me at my 235-pound weight, and you're looking at me going, dude, you really need to lose about 75 to 80 pounds. I mean, granted, that may be a hard truth I do not want to hear. Especially at that time, because I tended to joke about my weight. I was depressed. I was very negative, but I put on this really good facade for a while.
Yeah.
That was not going to hold up.
Yeah.
But
I identified with your testimony. I saw that on your channel. That was a good story.
Yeah, it's and the thing is, I fall off that diet, and then I get back on it, and then I lose some more, and it's back and forth. So the weight loss is still a journey with me, but if you're looking at someone who needs to drop that weight, the way I would frame it up, especially if, and I did this during one video where I said, listen, if you need to lose that weight, do it. Do whatever you have to do. just changing the way you snack will be a great start. And then you'll find it just kind of it's a little rabbit hole, and you'll go down it. And the reason you'll go down it is because I like having you around.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, look.
When you're conveying that sense of value to the other person, like I want to have you show up for a few more games. I want to have you run one of my games.
Right.
And you can't do that if you're sick or dead.
Look, like I tell people, especially now, because I was 224 pounds before I started working out 2 years ago, and I just told them, dude, just like 10 minutes of cardio a day, 5 days a week. And eventually you'll start to realize you can do a whole lot more than that, but that's a good one just to shed the sloth off of you.
Yeah, start small. Start wherever you can. If all you can do is walk down the street and back, then do that.
Yeah. I was 224. I'm 159 today.
Oh, nice.
One effing 59. When I started working out, like, not only do people not believe how much I changed, they can't believe that I went for lean. Most people looked at me because I kind of have a berserker's profile. They looked at me and they figured I would have just bulked up and gone for like meat suit man.
Yeah.
But no. I said nah. I'd rather be more of a Jean-Claude Van Damme build because I want more speed. I gotta have more speed. Believe me, I want the power. Dragon Ball Z. This isn't even my final form. But like I yell that sometimes for fun when people see me. Like people haven't seen me in a while. They're like, "Oh my God, Steve, you look pretty good." Yeah, it's just like this isn't even my final form, right? Because I'm still going, right? I'm still going, and I still pick up the guitar and practice the guitar and wait for when I'm gonna, force my game master in my game. He's my old bandmate. And I was just like, dude, when are we going to start jamming again? Because I need a band, and I still can't bring myself to New York City.
Right.
Because I largely just don't want to. It's just like I don't know where I'm going to live there that isn't going to shamanistically, like, wreck me up. It's just if today is not a day I can find a little bit of nature, I'm going to go mad.
Yeah, I totally feel that 100%. And really, that's one of the things, like, what really got me into this was during the lockdowns, I was kind of thinking things over. And I remember, like, when I first started doing tarot readings, I was probably about my, I don't know, maybe late teens, early 20s. I had gotten a tarot deck, and I got this tarot deck in New Orleans before heading back home. And people who saw this tarot deck were like, kind of looking at each other like, "Oh, this guy's serious. He's really going head first into the deep end." And I had no idea what I was doing. And I read that little book that came with it, and then I sat down to just
which one did you get? Because like that's an interesting reaction.
If I'm not mistaken, I think it was the Golden Dawn Tarot, which was just absolutely packed with symbology.
Golden Dawn Tarot is a Rider-Waite-Smith variant style, right?
It really is, yeah.
Yeah, right? The thing is that, like, that's the thing with, like, tarot. It's just, like, there's not as many tarot decks as you think. It's just that so many of them are riffing off of Rider-Waite-Smith to call themselves their own thing.
Yeah,
definitely.
They all have the same cards. They all have the same names, give or take. My Celtic Tarot is a bit different from any other, but they do have different images. They do have different symbols. Some pack a lot of symbolism into it, some not so much. But when I got this deck, I really wish there had been someone to tell me at the time. When you're starting out, just start out simple. Try this one. Try this one if you want something a little, with a little more punch to it. But this one, I liken it to giving messages at gunpoint, because I got intuitive looks into people's lives I did not want. We're talking like into their bedroom habits, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, okay,
Wow,
your friends
interesting.
have to go. This is serious. They have to go. I need to tell you something, and you don't want them to hear this. And the last reading I gave was for this preacher's daughter, who she comes up to me just trying to go incognito here, and like a bad attempt at it. And I'm like, oh no. And she's asking me for a reading, and I'm like, okay. I was like, look, my place is right across the street. You can show up there. I'm usually off these days. Show up there. We'll go ahead and get it. I'll knock it out. No problem. She shows up with a few friends, and I'm like, this is not the way to do an incognito. So that's one of the things that happened during that reading. I'm giving the reading, and I stopped myself, and I was like, all right, everybody needs to get out now. Everybody needs to leave the room. And she's got this puzzled look on her face. I'm like, look, what I'm about to tell you is strictly very private, and you do not want your friends hearing this. So everybody out. So I kicked them all out, and made sure they were like literally off my porch so they couldn't hear what was coming next. I told her, I gave her warning, which was, look, whatever this is you're involved with your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it is, you need to stop, at least for a little while, because for now right now, Dad's on it. He knows something's up, and he's investigating. If you stop now, it's just a nasty rumor. If you don't, then it's going to get confirmation, which is not something you want. And I made sure that sunk in. I was like, all right, rest of you can come back in. So I just gave her a general overview of it. Packed cards away. It was all good.
And that's exactly. That's plenty of times I've had to share that kind of a message, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly how that works, and that's ethics, right? And and that's the ethical way that you handle the matter.
That's the ethical way I handled it.
Yeah.
Maybe about a week and a half later, I'm asleep. It's early in the morning. I hear what sounds like the police at my door, just boom, 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 boom. This unrelenting knocking is pounding on my door, and I'm like, what in the hell? So all I'm wearing is my sweatpants, my sandals. I got a pack of Marlboros in my hand. My hair is everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I grab my shades because it's gonna, I'm light sensitive. It's bright out there, and I don't feel like staring into sunlight. So
yeah.
I open the door, and I'm looking at this guy. This guy's looking at me, and I'm like, oh no. It's Dad. It's the preacher. And he is absolutely losing his mind. How dare I, involve his daughter in this and all this other stuff. So I light a cigarette, and I'm like, he has till I finish this to get his rant done.
Yeah.
And I let him go on, and I'm just leaning against the doorway with my hair everywhere going, I don't need this shit. I really don't need this right now. Oh, gosh. And he's losing it. And when he finally stopped, that's when my cigarette was finished, and I thumped the button into the street, and I went, look, dude, your daughter's a sexual deviant. That's got nothing to do with me, okay? Be a better parent. And I just shut the door on it. I was like, how did this happen? Apparently what happened was the nasty rumor he was on, which I was right about.
Right.
She did not take the advice. She got caught, and then all of her friends decided to cover her by throwing me at him.
Of course.
And I was like,
ain't that the easiest thing, right? Like they
thing,
like, because you're the outsider, especially because you aren't even a Christian of any sort to be spoken of.
Correct.
You are the black sheep. You are the scapegoat. You're the sacrificial lamb. They're Christians. This is what they do. This is actually what it means to be a Christian, is to be this level of a hypocrite.
I mean, I just liken it to being a hypocrite, that
exactly.
Anybody can be one, but especially with this, that was the situation. So on my way back to my room, I looked over at my coffee table. There's that deck sitting there. I took that deck, I put it all the way into the back of one of my closets. I never wanted to do that again. I was like, all right, this is where we cut. This is where we diverge in paths here. And I remembered that. That was like, I wanted to get back into it, but I wanted to get back into it, not quite as hardcore as that.
We got approximately 2 minutes to break, just to let you know.
Cool. So I ended up buying a couple decks on Amazon, and I got them in, and for a little while I just collected decks and would just go through them and look at them. And, they were beautiful decks, and I guess finally I decided, okay, it's time to quit screwing around, time to start getting back into it. And that, I'll be honest, my first readings were, man, you talk about ring rust on wrestlers. I had card rust big time, but managed to knock it off. So all's well that ends well there. I just won't ever read with that particular deck again. I do not own it. I don't want it.
Gotcha. Yeah. I've got my decks. I've got a couple of really, I got a couple that are on the brutal side. One that I use all the time, of course. Everyone knows my Wildwood. There's the Hermetic deck. Oh yeah, the Hermetic deck. I got this Hermetic, I think it's a Golden Dawn deck, actually. It's all black and white. I bought it in fucking Salem, Massachusetts last year.
Yep.
I got it after I wanted it when my buddy Brandon, Bonanza Bear, Spiders no Bonanza, he got it, and then he did a reading on me because I was impressed with all the symbolism. And although it's got the Kabbalistic tropes to it, I can bypass those because, like, for me, it's an inherent itch about the Tree of Life system, because there's a whole metaphysical numerology that is essential to Kabbalistic magic that is adversarial to the kind of magic that I do, that I went through a big search for, because I knew there was something that was not doing the job with the other one. Anyway, we are hitting break. We'll be right back.
Social problems be kind of like professional disasters. So, for example, if I know that I've been late a few times, in a social sense, and I'm like, oh, it's fine. Oh, I'll arrive late. I gotta make an entrance, and you're used to that in a social setting. And people have said, hey, Jabari, don't be late, man. You're like, all right, no problem. I'll show to the party uptown next time. Yeah. That social issue becomes a professional disaster, because if you're late in that social sense, when you're late as a professional, you could miss out on an opportunity. People will see that you're coming in late, so they may limit the recommendations they have for you towards other people. And then it just doesn't show good for your brand. So to circumvent that is, find out what your social problems are, so to speak. What do you do, maybe internally or with friends, that people have told you there's a problem, and fix it there, so that it doesn't affect you and become a professional disaster.
It's amazing how people have been raving about TFRLive all over Facebook. They've been posting their testimonials just because they want to get the word out, because it's worked so well for them. If you're not familiar with TFRLive, it's a 99% pure CBD oil, but the secret is the synergy between the hemp and the ayahuasca vine, the non-psychoactive component of the ayahuasca tea. We recently received an email from a wife whose husband has Parkinson's. For the first time, he's been able to sleep through the entire night. Another customer reported that they're no longer using NSAIDs because their tennis elbow has been relieved with TFRLive. The reports have been phenomenal and much more than we ever expected. Everyone should have access to this. That's why if you head on over to TFRLive.com right now and use coupon code TFR, we'll give you $5 towards your order. And we'll even ship it worldwide. That's TFRLive.com, AYALife.com.
Once in a decade, a true story comes along that remembers the future. After 6 Amazon bestsellers, I have completed the epic Birth Trilogy, a true story of Earth. By reading the Birth Trilogy, you will journey with the characters from the origin of Earth to its final destiny in a white-knuckle ride that combines the intrigue of Tom Clancy with the epic scope of Prometheus and Interstellar. You will learn more about the purpose of life, the mystery of death and the true nature of your soul that you thought possible. The Birth Trilogy is now available on Amazon and Kindle. The audio version is a free bonus when you buy the paperback, so even if you're not a great reader, don't worry about it. I read it for you. Use the Amazon app today and buy the Birth Trilogy, spelled B-E-A-R-T-H, or search for my name. I'm Brooks Agnew.
You're listening to the Truth Frequency Radio Network.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is Zerilath here on TFRLive. TFRLive.com. I was just in the vault, and then the connection timed out for some reason, and I had just sent a message to management that I noticed something odd during the break on the production screen that wasn't interfering with the show, but had to be brought up. Okay, so hopefully TFRLive.com is not down. The broadcast should still be going out on all the other platforms, like that it's still on. Like, are we still on iHeartRadio? I don't even remember. We used to be. But anyway, we can keep going. Everything should be okay. If somebody wants to let me know on alternative platforms if we're down or up for any particular reason, that would be fantastic. Either way, this is going on in the archives. No big deal. My guest tonight is Raven Wulfgar. He is a YouTube content creator, and his fields are in heathenry, divination, the occult, and very particularly with the tabletop gaming industry and the intersections with his other passions therein. And we were just talking in the beginning a little bit of Raven's backstory, how he got into how he started on divination. And now I want to know where he started on heathenry and discovered the runes.
Oh, that one's easy. I actually was in an occult shop in it's a city called Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I had never been here before. But there was a guy there, and he just looked at me. He says, "I really want to do a reading for you." And I'm like, "Oh, man, I'd love to, but right now I'm kind of broke." He's like, "No, I just want to do one." I'm like, "Okay, sure. Well, what do you got?" We sat at his table, and that's when he broke out his small pouch, and he had the runes in there. And I was like, "Whoa, what is this?" And I had heard the term runes before, but I had never really been exposed to them. And he's, we talked for like a couple of minutes. Then he has me reach into the bag myself and move the stones around, which were these polished bloodstone. Very nice, very good feel.
Nice.
Got a great vibe off of them. And he just had me pick like 3 or 4. And I picked 3 or 4, and then, of course, gave the bag back to him. And he did this reading for me, and it's been so many years ago, I don't remember what the content of it was. Don't even remember what the question I asked was. But he got to that last one, and I remember he kept pulling rune after rune after rune, and then the blank one came up. And then he explained it all to me. And it kind of spooked me a little bit, because I was like, this guy doesn't even know me, but this guy has like an inside look into very, very private parts of my life. and it was just me and him sitting in this room when he did this. So I'm not like uncomfortable, but it was like, how did he do that? That's so weird. And I thought, okay, I tried tarot before. This fascinated me. And I remember, being in a small town in the South, you don't have much access to much of anything. So for years, that was something I just kind of mulled over and thought about. And finally, during the lockdowns, I was like, while I'm getting into tarot, why don't I get into runes as well? And I found a set that I thought was cool. I liked them. I got them and got a couple books and started looking those up as well. I found they were very easy to learn. They already aligned with my spiritual path. And on top of all of that, I was able to kind of just bust those out and read them on the spot. It didn't take a lot of effort. They were very clear, and they were, of course, very loud, very amplified. So that's really how I got into runes. It took a very, very long time to actually get to them, but it didn't take long for me to learn them. And hearing, like, when I go back and read, like, the Poetic Edda and the Havamal and things like that, it was even more eye-opening. Just, like, kind of finding out spiritually where they come from.
Yeah, exactly. And then, there's a lot of people that can infer, the proper context of an Edda to a rune, and some of it I think is absolutely correct. Some of it might be based on what could be like assumption of sources. There's a whole lot of that going on. Dr. Crawford is a walking example of the assumption of sources, in how he breaks down the language and turns it into I don't know what kind of English he's turning it into. But it's certainly the way he translates it. It almost completely like removes points being expressed by earlier terminologies that I was familiar with, right?
True. Yeah. However, with Dr. Crawford, the reason I kind of picked his material first.
Yeah.
As far as I know, he's not a practitioner himself. So to me, he's coming at it from a linguistic perspective, an academic perspective first. So to me, there wasn't a lot of bias there. Dr. Carolyn Larrington from, I think, Oxford University.
Right.
She also published a book, which was the Poetic Edda. Many similarities, not all 100% the same, but very similar in terms of vibe and of course a little bit of a assumption there, because we have to remember when it comes to this kind of culture, not much survived. So there's a movement right now to reconstruct all this. The problem with the reconstruction movement that I've found is that they tend to want to assign an agenda to it, which I'm not about that. I want to keep it as objective as possible. So, in the reconstruction of it, if you're telling me that, these people from this area migrated and mingled with other cultures, that's absolutely fact. That can be 100% supported by archaeology. And I'm good with that. But to assign a current year agenda to it, I just don't think works. It really does rob.
Exactly. Right. And in this practice, the way that I see it is that there's two levels of this practice, right? There's the practice that is satisfied with the presentation of facts that the authority of the world presents to you. And so, like, I came into Jackson Crawford as a conspiracy theorist that already had enough of lies and propaganda from literally everything, everywhere, all the time, for good reason. I see the world I see it this way today. And I saw it that way, then when heathenry started to become like my passion, right? And so
Right.
if we can't agree on the history of, you know, the Bronze Age of Europe, you know, especially where the first settlers that we have the records for came from, because we're trying to get the origins of these original peoples, right? And most of the ideas that they came from the east and from the north is what makes the most rational sense, right?
Yeah.
You know, and
Right.
and
with
yeah,
with
go on.
trying to, like, I've got a book on my in my library here of I forget what the name of it is, but it is a completely scholarly work on runes and their origins. And what it argues is that, just based on real world facts here, that it was an alphabet system developed for communication, developed for record keeping, which makes sense. I do kind of see that. So if we're just going strictly based on fact, Odin finding the runes and, you know, discovering them by hanging from Yggdrasil it can sound like a source of woo, and it is. I'm not gonna lie. It definitely is.
A source of
When you're
what?
Woo, you know, woo woo.
Woo woo.
Just-
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And what we do, it can be construed as a source of woo, and that would be a fair assumption. However, I do like to look at it from that real world perspective too, because it really rounds it out for me. If I can get a good solid grasp on something like that, it makes sense. We can all agree that the rune Fehu translates to wealth, but we also have to consider, at the time, what did they consider wealth? You know, how did they measure that?
Right.
And yeah, they measured it in silver, they measured it in gold, and whatever else the pirate Vikings
Right.
could raid from monasteries at the time.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, they're going where it was.
Yeah.
That's just fact.
But there's also a point where the smaller your tribe is, the smaller your community, you know, when you're getting way more basic, coin doesn't mean much, because you're just like, you know, you're just very, very, you know, you're practically family as neighbors. There's a high possibility that, you know, one of your daughters could marry one of your sons. And so you're doing your own basic business, your own establishment of currency. Coinage and currency is a technology, right?
True.
Right. It's something made by the skill of the mind to substitute for the things themselves. And that's why people had figured out that fe is for fee is also, you know, for the cow. You know, it ended up being for the female cow. And because if you want to talk about currency, the most common form of barter in the age that they originally domesticated the oxen, or the aurochs, in the age of Taurus, which is where the Bronze Age information comes in, because basically the world had reset itself from the last cataclysm by the time we hit the age of Taurus, aka the Bronze Age.
True.
That's where that came in, and then you got Fehu, means, you know, female beast of burden, and Uruj, which is the male beast of burden, right?
True.
You know, strength, health, and vitality is Uruj, and so these two things going together makes sense in the most proper sense of this kind of exchange of energies. You want to have the feminine preceding the masculine, right? Even in tarot, that's a little secret for you, is that based on the way things were going at the time of the official development, especially when the major arcana was put in, because the major arcana came later when it was a card game, is that they just couldn't sit there and put the High Priestess as the one card, because that, you know, the chauvinistics trying to hold down divine feminine at the time, whether through the church or whatever, they would not be able to tolerate it. They were pushing it in occult symbolism as it was.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that, the two runes you pointed out, Fehu and Uruz, those are two runes that I tell people, if you're familiar with them, and now you should be, I want everyone to have the same I see the code moment. And this is kind of how I live my life every day. I'm always looking just to see if I can see those glitches, those little moments where things aren't quite adding up, and just with the knowledge that I have.
Are you telling me you can dodge bullets?
I'm telling you I don't have
to. Anyway, keep going.
So, like anyone who's listening to this right now could pause and go look up, just pull out your phone, YouTube this. It's still there. I checked last night. John Cena, Experian game show or quiz show.
Okay.
And there's you will see a lot of different videos, but this is the one in particular I wanted to point everyone toward because
John Cena the wrestler, correct?
John Cena the wrestler.
Oh boy.
He did a lot of Experian commercials. And there was one, like, I never really took notice of it until much later. And then one day I'm literally studying the runes and their meanings, and I see this commercial and I instantly close the book. And I'm like, what is this? I must have seen this commercial a million times and never caught it till this moment. But John Cena is on this Jeopardy-like quiz show, and he's on the middle podium. He's got two other players respectively on either side of him. They don't have near as much money as he does, and he's got this like tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands on his board, and he is sitting on top of a cow. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. The rest of these commercials, maybe that made some sense, but why is it
okay?
And I realized this is for Experian, a credit service. Credit is debt. We have a lot of people at that time were trying to get personal credit and loans and things like that. And this was actively pushing this right to the front, and that's when I saw it and I went, "Oh, this is wrong."
All right, here we got 30 seconds. Let's let the audience hear it. You'll be able to see it on the share screen on Skype.
Yep. There it is. Yep, that's the one.
There we go. We got on the left, there's a lady with $50 that she's won, and the other guy's got 4 on the right, and he's kind of like in a tie. He's just kind of like a regular dude. All right, and then 23,500, and let's start.
Welcome to That's What I Thought. Let's get right to it. Travel to Mars takes 7 months, but you can raise your credit scores instantly with
Experian.
This tool doesn't fix scars. It can help you save on them.
Can I phone a friend?
No.
Experian.
That's it for ways to raise your credit scores instantly. Next up, purple cows and credit card facts.
13 points? I am a winner.
Boost your credit scores and save. Free only with
Experian.
Go to Experian.com or get the app now.
Interesting. The first question, what was that? 7 months to get to Mars, right?
7 months to get to Mars, yeah.
So that was the one part of the commercial that I took away, was the 7 months to get to Mars. The one thing I know about Experian is that I did it once and it worked way back in the day. I had discovered the guys who did What Lies in Your Debt, which was a get out of fraudulent various financial debts thing that basically found the exploitations to get you, where they're trying to keep you roped into debt that is no longer a liability against you, but they keep harassing you for it, right? It's this kind of thing. And you send a letter to the 3 major credit bureaus, Experian and there's two other ones. I can't remember their damn names, right? And you just send them a letter, and you and like you basically you ask them for like an audit or something of your debt, and they send you something back, and then you send one more letter back, and you tell them that I do not recall any of these charges or something to that effect. And I did that, and all that stuff, and pretty much all that stuff disappeared, and I never had to address it in the restructuring of my credit score. And my credit is crap right now, but that's for things I did well afterwards.
Right. But here's the thing, if you look at that, there's that purple cow there.
Yeah.
And we just established that Fehu symbolized the cow as wealth.
Right.
Because they did measure their wealth in head of cattle.
Mm-hmm.
This was an honor culture, and that's something we could go. That's another rabbit hole we can go down later. But this, to me, it pushed the message that debt was wealth. It really just kind of equated the two, and I was like, that's not correct. And that's where I was like, okay, something is up here. And that's when I went back and watched the other commercials, and I was like, my goodness, it seemed like there was a bit of subliminal messaging there, something that they were trying to kind of, this company was trying to push right directly at people through their TV screens. And I was like, yeah, someone does need to get ahead of this. And that's when I started taking it. I took that to my Twitter and just wherever else anyone would listen to me. And I put that out there. I was like, if you haven't seen this, you're going to see it now. And here's what's going on. And I don't know if I woke anybody up with that, but it was just one of those I see the code moments. I wanted to show everybody else, hey, glitch right here. They've messed up.
Excellent. Yeah. I know what it's like to walk around with that kind of site, right? Like people get, like unless people are like hungry to basically be doing the same thing that you're doing, finding glitches in the Matrix, they ultimately hate it because it's this, you're deconstructing their Wereld or world. Yep. Wereld is the Norse way of saying it, meaning man time. You're introducing them to the backstage, and there's a whole setup before you can show them backstage. You know what I mean? There's a whole setup presentation, because otherwise you're just opening up the void to them, and it's immediately going to flood them with all the nightmares, because you went and you explored all the nightmares already, but that's what you were interested in doing, right?
Yeah,
you had already had a reason to go through and check out all the nightmare fuel, and you forget that other people can't handle it, because you remember when those nightmares were just your imagination. You remember when you watched, a dystopian film like Brazil, and said to yourself, God, good thing we're not that retarded. And then you look at bureaucracy today and you're like, oh my God, we're that retarded. Right?
And here's the thing, I deal with bureaucracy every day, because people come to me for passport photos. And I have to explain to them what it is that these people are looking for, and why we're so picky about what passes, and why we have to do another one and things like that, because nothing makes a bureaucrat happier than turning you down for whatever it is you're seeking permission to do. Nothing makes them happier. They have that much power. And I'm like, I want to take that power away from them.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Here. The audience can't see it, but you can see it. This passport expired, and I've been going through so much crap that I just don't. Man, look at me when I was 224 pounds. Like I just have to get a new picture, because people are starting to question the authenticity of my driver's license.
They've done the same with mine.
yeah. So, but at any rate, yeah. But I think I'm past the 6-month renewal period at this point because, my car died in the middle of all sorts of terrible things that should not have happened while my car died. So, yeah, it took me forever to recover, and my debt's astronomical. It's life. Anyway, let's see. We should have. We got about 2 more minutes till break. That's awesome. So, give us another little bit in this 2 minutes. Maybe just mention introductorily. Norse magic systems, and and you probably know some of the tarot-based magic systems at this point, at the very least, from a hermetic perspective. What other systems you got under your belt?
Right now, I'm still studying a book. This book's out of print. It's called The New Magus by Donald Tyson, and that's what I'm studying. Also, Heathen Soul Lore Foundations by Winifred Rose Hodge. That's a very good one. There actually a lot of the books that I have are from my former group, a group that I left called The Troth. The books that I have, though, are still very good. It was the R Troth books that I'm still going through them with a fine-tooth comb, and I'm kind of trying to just weed out the fluff that's there. But if I had to recommend anything, it probably wouldn't be those 2 books unless that's the group you want to join. I do a lot with, it's not just Norse systems that I deal with. I deal with a lot of different stuff. I deal with, I have taken elements that, again, amplified very loud, that maybe this is part of my practice that I need. So I do a morning ritual every day. I make an offering every day. And then just recently I've gotten into growing things. So I just started trying to grow some chives and dill that's just to see if I can grow anything. If I have that green thumb, and if not, then what do I need to learn? Because I do have a book on Norse herbs and healing, which is what I want to do the most. That's really where I'm aimed.
Oh, we're in break. Hang on.
There we go.
When you have a great melody,
Ever. Instantly connected.
I love it when the beat goes.
Did you know you can listen to Truth Frequency Radio on iHeartRadio? Just download the app to your smartphone or smart TV and get the best of TFR wherever you are.
Radio.
I'll see you there.
So, you love talk radio, then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
What's up? It is time for us to adopt a new company brand to encompass everything that we do, to reflect who we are and what we hope to build. I am proud to announce that starting today, our company is now Meta. We're going to talk about the metaverse. Meta. I thought I was supposed to be the robot. Meta. This could be very positive for our society. Meta. I hope that you will join us. You're going to be able to do almost anything you can imagine. This isn't about spending more time on screens. It's about making the time that we already spend better. We're starting to see a lot of these technologies. Next, there are avatars. And that's how we're going to represent ourselves in the metaverse. All right, perfect. I thought I was supposed to be the robot. You'll see the facial expressions. You'll get to decide when you want to be with other people, when you want to block someone from appearing in your space, or when you want to take a break and teleport to a private bubble. Meta. We're going to talk about the metaverse. Meta. I thought I was supposed to be the robot. Meta. This could be very positive for our society. Meta. I hope that you will join us. I want to share what we imagine is possible. This is not the way that we are meant to use technology. That's a little too realistic. That's a glimpse of the kinds of experiences that you might have in the metaverse. You're going to really feel like you're there with other people. I also want to be upfront about the fact that there's a ton that we just don't know yet. So we're going to approach this with humility and openness. Meta. We're going to talk about the metaverse. Meta. I thought I was supposed to be the rogue. Meta. This could be very positive for our society. Meta.
You must unite with citizens.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
All right, we're back. What's up, everybody? It is Zerilath. We are at the top of the hour on Trigenesis here on TFRLive.com. The station website had a little bit of a hiccup with the server system, but I think everything was still going through on TalkStream Live and iHeartRadio and all those things. So everything should be good, and there will be a complete archive if you missed anything. Plus, this show is being recorded on my end. Anyway, welcome back. My guest tonight is YouTuber Raven Wulfgar, who's got the YouTube channel of the same name. He is a heathen tarot rune reader and gamer and gaming industry commentator. And the last hour, we talked about his introduction to the occult and tarot, and then we talked about runes and aspects of heathenry that he got into. And I do want to also talk about this other thing, which is his niche, which is the gamer side of it. The gamer side of it is a lot more interesting than a lot of people know, because of the sheer level of what's going on amongst all of these people that are writing fantasy stories and fantasy systems. And it's fascinating looking at the different levels of research that went into the games. One of the things I love is when I see somebody who's made a system that synergizes with an accurate portrayal of a mythos that exists in real life. And then I'm actually realizing this is training wheels to becoming a proper magus. You could, if you wanted to, take all these people at gaming conventions and actually turn them into effing wizards if they would just stop turning into spheres.
Very true. Very true. That is very true. And for years, I've contended, even when I was practicing Catholicism and joining, getting baptized in just about every church I could to dispel these rumors that were flying around about me. But and it just as an aside, none of it worked. It did not work. Those rumors carried on and intensified for many years. So anyway, with gaming, I've always contended, and I still do. They have an intersectionality, yes, but my gaming is separate from my practices. The gaming side of things, when I'm running a game for someone or a group, that the real act of magic there is when I can get everybody in the group to actually believe this is the world we're in, this is the threat we're facing, and we need to be able to face it effectively. When they're that bought in for just those few, those couple of hours or whatever, even though they know they're rolling dice they're eating snacks, they're at a table, whether it's in my home or someone else's, or even here online, when they're that bought in for just those few hours, when they can get away from all the things that suck.
Yeah.
And face that evil, whether it's a world-breaking evil or it's just an evil that's plaguing a town.
Yep.
Even if it's just some guy summoning rats to throw at the town or whatever.
Yeah.
Then that's the real act of magic for me. And
right.
When it comes to gaming, I try to keep those things separate. I do see the intersections in them. However, when there's a parent there that's worried about their kid possibly getting into something destructive because of a game, I'm like, okay, have you sat your child down and told them how to separate fantasy from reality? Because that was one of the great services my dad did for me. He would sit me down when I'm watching a movie and be like, okay, when guys get shot, they don't get back up, right? Or he'd listen to my music with me and be like, okay, what they're talking about is not how they live, right? And stuff like that. And just that little bit that he would do really helped me, because then I could see, these are artistic expressions. They're not, mirrors of the real world. If anything, they're exaggerated.
Right.
So it helped me to kind of logically figure that out. But there are some games that do mix the two, and I've seen them. I own a couple of them. I would never encourage someone, though, if we're playing Call of Cthulhu, for example, I would never encourage someone to pick up the Necronomicon as a spiritual path. That's just I'd be like, instead read Lovecraft's work, understand that the Necronomicon itself is a work of fiction, and look at what happens to the main characters. They either die, they go insane, or they live with existential dread,
right.
as is the case of Charles Dexter Ward. Mm-hmm. So that's not a path you really want to pursue.
Yeah. Lovecraft does have, I forget the name of it, he's got a really awesome short story if you're a musician. He's got this one story about this musician who drove himself mad because he started discovering musical tunings and notations that was basically opening up an interdimensional portal.
Yep, that was From Beyond. Yeah, that was it was a machine that was designed to set off frequencies and things like that, and fine-tune them.
You know what? From Beyond may also be doing that with a machine. This was straight up just a guy and like a violin.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. I know the one you're talking about now, and the name escapes me.
Yeah. Now I have to grab it. Hold on.
You know what? I've got a copy of it right here.
I got my beast.
Wow. Yep.
The full Lovecraft that I bought at the Providence shop at the Big East Exhibition.
I got the one I bought at Barnes & Noble for like $25. It's a pretty big one. Let's see. Definitely wasn't Beyond the Wall of Sleep. I remember that one.
Yeah, no, it'll sound like it's about music.
Ex Oblivion.
Here it is. The Music of Eric Zahn. That's the one.
Eric Zahn. Yeah,
yes.
There it is. 174. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the one. So that one's a personal favorite, as just somebody who, like part of my craft is being a skald. I enjoy the oration. This show is a work of skald craft, right? But music in particular.
And to that point, I should probably point this out, that I'm currently involved in playtesting a game called Horde Wars, which is written by a man who is by faith Christian. And he and I have had many, many interesting discussions that they go on at length. But
hey, look, there are, I believe, these rare few polytheist Christians. Okay, and I can roll with that. I can work with that.
Yeah, this guy is definitely dyed-in-the-wool monotheistic Christian, He and I, we've had, like I said, we've had a great many discussions. But what surprised me about his game was he has a Viking class or a Viking character that you can create, and one of the classes is Skald.
Mm-hmm.
I picked it naturally. I was like, okay. Well, when I first started playing, he had some pre-generated characters, and I picked one who was part of Church of the Church of the Creator, which is like a divine hospitaller type order. And I was like, give me a description of this guy. What was he like? He said, you like Excalibur, right? I was like, yeah. He goes, picture King Arthur kind of younger, so before his hair started graying when he had the full facial growth. I was like, oh, okay, very cool. So not a king, but definitely almost a paladin. He's like, yeah, sort of. I was like, okay, cool. I can roll with that. And I'm playing against type for like the first time ever. So played that for a while. That was really cool. I can't wait to see how that story progresses, because we did stop to create our own characters. And the Viking character was the one I created, thankfully, because we ended up at sea with the entire crew of a ship that we had booked passage on dead. So now I have to sail this thing. So I'm essentially the de facto captain of this ship. And I was like, okay, very, very cool. But he also has runic tattoos that, as he progresses in level, will become useful in his spellcraft. So there's things like that. Like I said, those little intersections kind of amuse me. I think they're really cool. And he does do skaldic poetry, because when it comes to like music, I'm not very talented, and I have a singing voice that's unfit for the deaf. So I'm not about to sing anything.
Well, the thing is that like, yeah, well, you know, Skald, maybe even the same for Bard, right? It's really just more about oratory performance. If you can stand on stage and like just do a monologue or something, like a stand-up comedian is also a Skald, right?
True.
You know, it's about your ability with wordcraft and such. But in a, I don't remember if it was for D&D, but it was a D20 D&D compatible character type. There was a book that had a class called Skald in it. I had a character that took a few levels in it to play like the Viking berserker type, but was also a musician, and his axe was like it had like these holes in it, so it was kind of a wind instrument. So I would swing my axe and it would make noises. It would make music when I was swinging it. Like, this was this idea I came up with for this guy. And so I'm in the middle of combat while performing in combat. And that performance is making everybody better at the combat. And our side gets that little leading edge. And that's how a Skald operates, right? So it's like a bard, but it's kind of like a warrior bard. It's cool.
Yeah, very cool. And that's the kind of stuff I love hearing about that. And
yeah. And it took me forever. Like, I didn't know that game had gotten that name for the Old Norse word for bard. So like, other than like, it was like, they kind of told me, but it wasn't the same meaning to me, because I didn't know how much it was as a personal claim, right? Because back then it's just like, the Viking, you don't think that, you really descended from anything like that until you feel it too much, right? I didn't go to 23andMe. I felt it too much, and I understood my family name.
Right. And when you're looking at your own ancestry, you will connect with certain things more than others. I really don't connect with playing the. This is going to sound a little weird coming from me. I don't really connect with playing the magic user too much, because, quite frankly, you have to situate them at the back of the party tactically, because I mean they get one shot real quick at like level 1.
Right.
So you really want to kind of protect them. What am I looking for? The paladin, I think it is, or the cleric. The cleric, I would a little more align with that, because that's the guy you want to keep alive, or the girl you want to keep alive, because they constantly throw the healing magic at the group when they're down. They're the ones that are going around taking care of everybody, and they fight mostly with like blunt type instruments, like your medieval maces and flails and things like that. So not really sword carrying types. Paladins obviously serve a deity of sorts, depending on what your alignment is and things like that. But when it comes to that, I was always the guy that was like, you know what, I want to play the barbarian, because quite frankly, and this is where I say the two are mutually exclusive, because to me, having experience with Robert E. Howard's stories, and I was coming from Elsprog de Camp's Conan. But when I read those stories, I was fascinated by this guy who was not me. And at the time, I'm this scrawny kid with long, stringy hair, constantly getting, beat up and all this other crap.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't want to be, for the people who say, oh, I could never see myself in this game. I'm like, dude, did you make a character sheet?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you didn't, then you've just said everything you need to say to me. Of course, I didn't want to see me. I wanted to see this big badass who would go into the fray and come out covered in their blood going, okay, who's next?
Yeah. Precisely. Right.
Yeah, that was my getaway.
Right. Exactly. Like I in some way, shape or form, I need my character to be this better and special version of myself. Right.
Sure.
That was a lot of things I did. One of my favorite D&D games was this game I played with this guy who, we kind of did it fast and loose. Like he knew enough for the combat style. Like he had a way of doing the mechanics where we would do like this number guessing game. And then like that was self-confirmable. I forgot exactly how he did it. And so, a number would be established, and then I would pick a number between 1 and whatever, and then he'd say it's within. I forget how it was done, but the point is, so that way we were just kind of like hanging out in the porch or whatever, and we didn't fuss over books, because he had a very interesting way he wanted to do a narrative, and it was kind of a one-on-one most of the time. A couple of times a third hand came in, because we had this other friend who was he only really came around for D&D once a week, right? Otherwise, he was too nerdy for kind of both of us. But we liked him. Anyway, long story short is I made this druid character that I had conjured up, and this like I put all these little bits and pieces into his character, because I wanted to be a little bit more fun, explorative with interacting with NPCs and such, especially because I wasn't going to have any players around me doing this kind of like solo session style. And it turned into this nice big arc dealing with some weird mastermind who's like a reality bender, and my character had to learn like, mind over matter stuff, and like a lot of willpower checks to go through the various ordeals he put my character through. But I had like this, I made this very like, he was like pseudo based on what's his face, the lead guy in Stargate SG-1, right? The one with the cool attitude who knew how to like really backtalk the aliens that were trying to intimidate Earth.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what he was like. He liked to talk as a druid, right? He almost talked. He talked like a warrior, but he did the druid thing, and he had. And because I was astrology obsessed then as well, I wanted my character to have a ram as a familiar. Why? Because I'm an Aries. Ram, awesome, right? It is like my mindset, right? And so it was. So I had a very unique familiar by most, kind of like, you pick your familiar and you get like a ram, right? Who gets a ram? right? And it's a diorama. Remember, it's a diorama, not just a ram. Yeah, no. So it's more badass, but he calls it like a sheep and stuff because he's like trolling me a little bit. It's all in good fun, right? Because at the end of the day, the game allowed that ram, because of my imagination, to do some kick-ass shit, right? And, now I'm sitting here 43 years old and realizing how much I was conditioning myself to be me now, living it in the real world.
Well, we can all identify with the hero's journey. We can all identify with the journey of the anti-hero, especially if you're like us and you're Generation X. We are basically the anti-heroes of any generation. It's why you don't mess with us. But when it comes to the hero's journey, we all kind of, this is why I say role-playing games, especially like D&D, whether you're playing like an old school version of it or you're playing the new, once you have a command of the rules, once your DM has a command of it, I don't even care if you're playing Cyberpunk, Old School Essentials, the Wretched Verse, Osric, doesn't matter. In any of these games that are available today, and if you're going to get into them, don't be afraid to try new ones. That's absolutely essential. You will get so much more out of trying. Even if your mainstay is D&D whatever edition, try a new game, something you could do one shots and stuff like that with, and you're going to find out that when you do that, you're not just telling one story. I mean, nobody watches one movie all the time. Nobody watches just one TV show. They watch a bunch. Try something different. You're going to find so much in there, and you will be able to explore yourself in some ways. And not only that, but whenever you're out there in the world, and you're kind of thinking over what that character of yours did, you're going to see some parallels that you'll be able to capitalize on a lot better than someone who has never played one of these, claims they have no imagination, doesn't have any interest in them. Because I'm gonna let you know something. Some of the players make some of the best DMs, and some of the best DMs make some of the best real world leaders. You'll have a leg up, and if you're just a kid, you're going to have a leg up on your reading comprehension, your math, and if you're going to be doing some research here and there. So you'll have a leg up on your history and stuff like that too.
Say what you will about some of the villains of the globalists, but like it was well known by a lot of people, whether they were talking about conspiracy theories or whatever, but like statements were made, I think at least by Colin Powell of all people, where it was just like, a big thing that he did in basic training when he was like first got into the military was he played D&D in the downtime with his guys. Yeah, and that's part. And he said it had a little bit of a contribution to do with his strategy as a general. So if you want to be a successful warmonger and harass brown people in America, you got to play D&D, people. Come on. We're the evil empire over here. We have to keep it up.
Or alternately, you could go to something like One Page Rules. One Page Rules has a Patreon. $10 a month is their top tier. You get all these STL files for miniatures, and on top of that, they have games like Grimdark Future, Faster Than Light. These are all like little tabletop skirmish war games. So they're not role-playing games in the technical sense. In fact, it's a rules-light version of Warhammer. So if Warhammer's a little too expensive and you're just kind of looking to get into something, if you know someone with a 3D printer, you have one yourself, you could just print as many of these as you could possibly stomach and play these games. And that's where D&D comes from, is tabletop wargaming, which came from our military, because these military generals used to move miniatures on a diorama, and that way they had their tactics they could communicate to the field. Now, once that battle was over, these things were just going to go in the trash, and then these guys would be like, hey, My kids would love that. Let me take it home to them.
Yeah, exactly. I was just thinking they probably just gave it to their kid, like army brats on the base and stuff. Of course they would.
So army brats on the base would become these nerds that would play these war games. Then they made historical simulations that would go back to like the Napoleonic Wars, World War II, et cetera, on down the line. When it got to the medieval part, that's where Gygax and Arneson come in, and they're like, hey, why don't we introduce a little bit of like sword and sorcery into this? Why don't we introduce a bit of Lord of the Rings into this? And that's where D&D comes from initially.
Yeah.
And my encouragement to everybody is find original D&D or one of its clones. I'm going to let you know right now, original D&D was not very well written. It was just, that's what was available at the time.
Yeah.
Or get the basic rules and start from there. Learn how to adjudicate what little you have. Learn how to deal with those very creative players. And when you do go into something like more modern, like 5th edition or something like that, you're going to be better armed as a DM, or you'll be better armed with any game you decide to run. You're going to be better at adjudicating those rules because you will have had practice. You are not going to get it right all the time.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a group, grab Mythic GM emulator and do some solo gaming. I've done it.
Yeah,
and I've got an entire adventure written up called Cavern of the Chaos Lord on Against All Odds 4.blogspot.com that you could check out. And that was just from a game of 4 Against Darkness, which is a solo game.
Yeah. And if you're really super new at a whole darn thing and everything else, like have a backup character, like in case like you kill your character in the first session or something because you're fumbling around completely alien things to you because you maybe played Risk back in the day and that's all you understood.
Hey, Risk has a ton of variants these days. I don't know if you've seen them.
Oh, I've seen all sorts of different versions of Risk. I have classic Risk, and that's about it. But I've seen other ones that I definitely would find amusing and try and play.
And that is essentially a tabletop war game that anybody can get into. And it'll give you an idea of what these guys who created D&D initially.
Well, we're going to come back. We're going to continue this conversation at the side of the break. My guest is Raven Wulfgar. We'll be right back.
Now, there's two ways to ask. Ask with intelligence. It didn't say ask intelligently, but I'm sure it meant that. Don't mumble. You don't get anything by mumbling. Be clear. Be specific. Intelligent asking means how wide, how high, how soon, when, what size, what color, how much. Define what you want and describe what you want. That's powerful. Goals become like a magnet. They pull you that direction. And the better you describe them, the more they pull. So ask intelligently. Here's number 2. Ask with faith. That's the childish part of the equation. Believe you can get what you want like a child, not an adult. Adults are too skeptical. So the formula really reads, make plans like an adult and believe in them like a child. And the most incredible things will happen. Just try it for
Extendivite is more than just a heart tonic. Do you have any of these symptoms? Night cramps in the hands and feet. Your arms and legs often go to sleep. On short walks, do your legs get aches and pains? Is your memory worse than it used to be? Ankles that swell late in the day? Has your blood pressure increased lately? If you answered yes to even one of these questions, you may have early warning signs of arterial blockages. Your body is saying that it is time to take Extendivite. These are not the normal signs of aging. They are the warning signs that accompany blocked arteries. Get your Extendivite today. Extendivite is available in capsule or liquid form for just $69.95 for a 2-month supply. To get started, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
For 5,000 years, the world was ruled with wooden ships by one man. 242 years ago, a small group of free men crafted a new nation built on liberty and freedom. Global elites have been fighting to destroy this new nation called America ever since. Based on actual events, Charm of Favor tells a true story of how they corrupted the election system. They infiltrated federal agencies and murdered witnesses, judges, and even presidents to keep from being caught. Now, the largest and wealthiest crime syndicate the world has ever known has been drawn out of the shadows. They have killed hundreds of Americans and recently attempted to assassinate half our congressmen. Still, they escape arrest through an almost supernatural charm of favor. Read Charm of Favor and be prepared to open your eyes to what may lie just around the corner. Charm of Favor is available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
No hate, no hype, no fear.
You're listening to Truth Frequency Radio.
We are TFR.
All right, welcome back, everybody. It is the last segment of the show. Time flies. We are having a rocking conversation with my good friend Raven Wulfgar here on Trigenesis, TFRLive.com. And we've been talking about a plethora of things, origins of the of his introduction to the occult and tarot, his introduction to runes and heathenry, and now we've been talking about his work in the gaming industry. What are all the things that you do? Do you just do this here? You teach people to play the game or something, or you got some other stuff you do out off of the internet, right?
I actually have. I have taught people how to play, and I'll start them with something kind of simple like Hero Quest, which is available again.
Oh yeah,
that's a nice little miniature board game. It specializes in dungeon crawls and things like that. But that was actually the earliest form of D&D that I played.
Dude,
which
the Hero Quest is so much fun. Oh my god, that game is great.
And, like, there was such a prohibition at the time where I lived, and in my own home, there was such a prohibition against D&D that I was not even allowed to look at it.
It was like it's like as if you were listening to Black Sabbath or something, right?
Right.
Total satanic panic mindset.
Yeah, and the thing was, like, I was actually able to get my hands on the music and the clothing and things like that well before I was able to get my hands on the games. And I always wondered, like, when they were making all this stuff taboo, that's kind of the problem with me. If you're going to make something taboo, I'm going to look at it.
All right. I'm pulling something up that you will know, but you know what? The audience would have no idea because I never talk about this world on the air. Hold on a sec. I have to find it real quick, and you'll hear it in the screen share. Yes, here it is.
Dungeon.
All right. So for the
Dungeons and
audience,
Dragons.
this parody play that is viral, that went viral on YouTube, at least the original version of it, is a comedy troupe that made a little animated skit that trolls the satanic panic around Dungeons and Dragons. And this is to have you understand what you're going through when you're being exposed to the occult, but you don't know it. And this is how people treat you.
Dungeons and Dragons. Satan's game. Your children, like it or not,
are attracted in their weaker years to the occult, and a game like D&D fuels their imagination and makes them feel special while drawing them deeper and deeper into the bowels of El Diablo. This afternoon, the Dead Alewives Watchtower invites you to sit in on an actual gaming session. Observe the previously unobservable as a hidden camera takes you to the inner sanctum of Dungeons and Dragons.
Gallstaff, you have entered the door to the north. You are now by yourself, standing in a dark room. The pungent stench of mildew emanates from the wet dungeon walls.
Where are the Cheetos?
They're right next to you.
I cast a spell. Where's the Mountain Dew?
In the fridge, duh.
I want to cast a spell.
Can I have a Mountain Dew? Yes, you can have a Mountain Dew. Just go get it.
I can cast any of these, right? On the list?
Yes, any of the first level ones.
I'm gonna get a soda. Anyone want one? Hey, Graham, I'm not in the room, right?
What room?
I want to cast Magic Missile.
A room where he's casting all these spells from. He hasn't cast anything yet.
I am, though, if you'd listen. I'm casting Magic Missile.
Why are you casting Magic Missile? There's nothing to attack here.
I'm attacking the darkness.
Fine. You attack the darkness. There's an elf in front of you.
Whoa! That's me, right?
He's wearing a brown tunic, and he has gray hair and blue eyes.
No, I don't. I have gray eyes.
Let me see that sheet.
Well, it says I have blue, but I decided I wanted gray eyes.
Whatever. Okay, you guys can talk to each other now if you want.
Hello. Hello. I am Gallstaff, Sorcerer of Light. Then how come you had to cast Magic Missile?
you guys are being attacked.
Do I see that happening?
No, you're outside by the tavern.
Cool, I get drunk.
There are 7 ogres surrounding you.
How could they surround us? I had Mordenkainen's magical watchdog cast.
No, you didn't.
I'm getting drunk. Are there any girls there? I totally did. You asked me if I wanted any equipment before this adventure, and I said no. But I need material components for all my spells, so I cast Mordenkainen's faithful watchdog.
But you never actually cast it.
Roll the dice to see if I'm getting drunk.
Yeah, you are.
Are there any girls there?
Yeah.
I did, though. I completely said when you asked me.
No, you didn't. You didn't actually say that you were casting the spell, so now there's ogres, okay?
Ogres? Man, I got an ogre slaying knife. It's got a +9 against ogres.
You're not there. You're getting drunk.
Okay, but if there's any girls there, I want to do them.
There you have it. A frightening look into America's most frightening pastime. Remember that it's not your children's fault that they're being drawn into a satanic world of nightmare. It's their gym teacher's fault for making them feel outcast when they couldn't do one single pull-up.
Yeah, one single pull-up.
3 times.
There we go. You have seen that one, Raven, right?
I actually heard it. It was an MP3, and someone shared it with me years ago. I was like, oh my god, this is great.
Oh my
so
dude,
one guy in the background.
That's one of the original channel that had that, because that's a mirror. But the original channel that had that version is not even the original version, but it's hysterical because people have made all sorts of different animations just to go over the audio sketch of it.
It was great.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was like the absurdity of it was what you just heard is pretty close to what a D&D session was like.
Yeah, it is. You weren't having a good time unless it wasn't some iteration of those issues.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, you're a health nut. Where's the kombucha? No Mountain Dew. It's kombucha, but it's the same joke.
Exactly. And the thing was, with the version I got into, which we used Hero Quest, we ran out of adventures. We used GURPS to supplement it.
Yep.
And we made up our own. Then we ended up with D&D 2nd Edition First Quest, which oddly enough had the exact same miniatures for the heroes that Hero Quest had. And we were very familiar with some of the concepts that were already there, but it was, this is when I got a little angry because I was like, everybody trusted when my spiritual development here has lied to me.
So here's a good question.
That's when the rumors began, because I began speaking out, and I'm a bit of a dumbass. I don't take into consideration where I am. I just start talking, and I'm literally in like full on fire and brimstone debates with my catechism teachers and everyone else, and I just don't care. They lied to me, and I'm going to expose them. And of course, the way they took you out of the equation was to start rumors about you and stuff like that. Get that alienation and ostracism going on. And all of that, all the stuff that I endured during that time was all designed to get me to stop playing. Well, obviously that failed. So, it's the one thing I'll tell people constantly, especially if you're a parent, don't make something taboo if you're not ready to back it up with fact. If you're gonna back it up with, like, if you're gonna tell a kid that Spider-Man exists and he exists because these comic books are there to, document his existence, well, then you're gonna have a very disappointed kid who's gonna be like, what else is Dad lying to me about?
Right.
So
well,
that's
unless you know how to do biblical programming about Spider-Man, then Spider-Man exists even though there's no evidence he exists.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't use circular logic. It's just not a good idea. That's how you lose.
Speaking of which, has D&D invented the spell detect pronoun yet? Because from what I understand, they may be working on a spell called detect pronoun.
Oh, well, I imagine there are companies that are getting ready to do that. Number one, actually, one has fully gone into it. Wizards of the Coast competitor Paizo, the producers of Pathfinder.
I love Pathfinder. They did it first. Pathfinder did it first.
Yeah. Pathfinder, I have first edition, so I'm good there. I don't need second edition. I have no interest in it. But Pathfinder, in their latest supplement, has included a transgender dwarf who is a hairdresser and beard stylist, and an agender crafting type something or other. I forget what it is, but I was just kind of looking at it going, oh, man.
Okay, in a fantasy world, I'm okay with something having its place. I'm not okay with something dominating, obviously, right? You're supposed to exist, so that isn't enough for me. I would have to hear about, they've made this rule across the board about how certain things work that then force you to cringe your way through a campaign to play it properly, right? Having your choice of introducing that character into your system or not, that's a different story, right?
Right.
Yeah. So that doesn't bug me. The thing I love the most about Pathfinder was not just that, it gives me like 3rd edition D&D, but better, in my opinion, but it was also, I love the Inner Sea world campaign setting. I loved it.
Yeah, I haven't looked at that one. Of course, now
it's just high fantasy Earth.
The books that I got on eBay for like $60 to $70. It was like 4 books, all first edition. So I was like, yeah, I'll get those, and I'll check it out, because a friend of mine plays Pathfinder pretty much exclusively almost, and he created this realm full of like Cenobite type characters, and he has his own world that he built, and it's very fascinating. And I'm like, if I ever, on the off chance that I ever do break down and actually go to a convention, which I don't know that I ever will, I'd love to sit at his table and play. And it's because I'm fascinated in the worlds he's built. But Castles and Crusades happens to be my go-to. That's my absolute go-to for fantasy systems, because that one has a lot. Not that it has a lot more intersectionality with my spiritual beliefs, because they do have 2 books, Codex Nordica and Codex Germania. And those, I could tell you, Brian Young did yeoman's work with his research. I absolutely love it. He has Codex Celtarum, Codex Sonarum, which is coming. That's the ancient Chinese mythology. Slavorum, that's Slavic mythology, Egyptian, which is self-explanatory, and Classicum, which is the Greek mythology. So they have books where you can introduce those mythologies. And if you're wanting to teach them from a historical perspective, you can, if you're running a game for your kids, especially if you're homeschooling, this is a way to kind of get them interested in history. This is a way to kind of immerse them in that rather than just giving them names, dates, this happened, that happened, which most kids, I was no exception, did not have an interest in. If someone had framed it up like this is going to be the biggest action movie you've ever seen, I'd have been like, all right, what do you got?
Right, right.
But
I mean, like if you could kind of get them to vibe with just like this, like, like this story is associated with family we forgot about long ago, right?
Yep.
It's a part of who you are.
Yep. And the thing is, and just like my physical library has gotten pretty big, but the PDF library I have is massive right now. And just to name a couple of things that I have in there, because I forget most of what I have in there because there's so many. One of the things that I have is called, shoot, I forgot what it was, but it was a game about. It's basically set during Christmas in Sweden, if I'm not mistaken, and it's about a Christmas cat, which has significance in Swedish folklore. And then I have another one called Ragnarok: Fate of the Norns. This one does not use dice to play it. You have to have a set of runes to play it.
Oh, okay.
That's the mechanic. And you're playing a Viking at the end of all things, Ragnarok.
Okay.
So,
yeah. See, that's what I'm talking about. This is the beautiful stuff that the gaming industry, when real human beings, not the imposters, the psychopaths that come in, can push a thing and put it out there. That's why I wanted you on this show, because you're that kind of a seeker for a kind of thing that I think is good for people's, for constructive recreational time, constructive social time. It's great.
Right. And these, like the one game that I did some work on, that anybody can go pick up, Wretched Darkness. This one's by the Red Room. And this is if you've ever played the game Cult, which I have first edition books of that one too.
I've heard of it.
Yeah, Cult was one of those games that got a little darker and a little edgier than World of Darkness did.
Ooh.
And it played on some themes that World of Darkness, in my opinion, missed. But if Cult Divinity Lost leaves you feeling a little bereft, Wretched Darkness is going to be the best update to that game. And the part that I worked on was the Paimon Tarot, which is a cursed tarot deck. And you can use any tarot deck that you want, or you can just use the book itself. And, running the game, you're playing an NPC who has this deck, and the drawing of a card will then, that tarot mechanic, it was introduced in Wretched Epoch, but it carries over into Wretched Darkness. This one is one of the most demonic tarot decks out there because it draw the wrong card and it can royally screw things up for your character.
Right.
In a very, very bad way.
Yeah, and you use very choice words. It's not just like an unlucky deck, right? So we're talking about there's a certain magic power that you got to be careful about because of how faithful they were to the occult symbolism to make the game work.
And the thing was, when Miguel and Sylvia asked me to do this to help them out with it, I was like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And what I did was I wanted to find one of the darkest tarot decks that I could find. And I went on Amazon and I piddled around for a little bit and I found one.
Geiger has a tarot deck.
No, this was the Goetia tarot deck.
Oh.
Yeah, so your first card out the gate is Lucifer. So I'm not using that as a functional tarot deck. No way in hell. But this is from the the book itself. It's on page. I don't have a page number here, but anyway, it says the Paimon Tarot is a one-shot introductory scenario for Wretched Darkness. The adventure was designed to give the player player characters a first exposure to the beyond and several factions in the game. It's not necessarily an easy introduction, though, as the characters will have to deal with entities from the Dark Realm. For a party composed of beginning characters, the game master should introduce only the less powerful demons. So the deck, which now has the look of a tarot deck from the early 20th century, is in the possession of a North American fortune teller named Madame Sophia. Her role in this is insignificant. She knows nothing about the beyond and very little about the occult in general. The character will perceive something is wrong when they start having dreams that seem to be like premonitions. So they're envisioning certain mysterious deaths that will happen soon and are caused by the 22 tarot demons. So Madame Sophia is sort of an NPC, but I mean, just on the cards alone, you can do live readings, cliched readings, TV readings, modern versions, and just to kind of like the visions will come true. And just to give you a sort of introduction to what just one card here, the Fool. So this is from the Major Arcana, just that first card, the Fool. A grotesque, cunning, and unpredictable imp representing the dark and treacherous spirit that is necessary for embarking on a dangerous journey. In many ways, this imp embodies the corrupted and debased essence of the human soul. Free from the constraints of morality and ethics, the imp is not hindered by conscience or the fear of consequences, but instead approaches each day with a sense of depravity and wickedness. And that's just the first card.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so then there's certain rules for that card that act upon this NPC, and it's what happens to her is your win condition in the game, right?
Or it's she perceives that a vision, like she's got a vision of something really terrible pertaining to your character, and she's going to draw a card or do a reading. And if she does a reading, the sum total of the cards, like sort of like what I do when I do a reading, I'm giving you each individual card, and then I start trying to stitch the relationships together or try to summarize it for you.
Yeah.
And that's the vision she's going to get. Now, the GM is playing Madame Sophia, and when Madame Sophia gives this reading, now there's that existential dread that's going to come over your character, because it's like, uh-oh, what do we do now? So now between the time you get that reading and the time that vision comes true, it's how do you prepare to face that?
Yeah. Just like when you've got the vibe with any social gathering, there's a certain kind of psychic vibe that happens in the gaming session because you're there. The egregore that's kind of seated in what you've done, making a character sheet. And even what the DM has done, constructing the main non-player characters, like the named ones, as opposed to like the random bum on the street that is a random encounter because you needed to bum a pack of smokes off of him for whatever reason, right?
Right.
And so that's all kind of permeating in the psychic field. This is a ritual space. Right. And it's interesting what goes in and out with that,
Right.
I recently jumped back in. You mentioned a World of Darkness, right? Yep. And how World of Darkness missed something. So I'm always paying attention to things like that. That's why I showed you and asked your opinion about that that game that was made by that Freemason. I was just like, oh, this is interesting. And then you
definitely.
Yeah, and then you mentioned there's a whole lot of problems with him when you actually dive into what's going on with the book and how he works with people. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. But with the White Wolf stuff, right? Like that was big training wheels. Like werewolf became training wheels for my shamanistic stuff, all my more metaphysical general stuff. The mage game. I'm doing a mage game right now, and we were talking about how you made something that was the opposite of you, right? Yeah. Now that I love myself the way that I do because of all things I can do, it's just like I am actually kind of making a slightly exaggerated version of myself. The game forces me to play a technocrat, you know? So like that's the challenge, right? It's just like, okay, I'm going to make this kind of like the athlete kind of side of myself as this kind of this mad scientist trying to make himself an Ubermensch, if you will, right? Yeah. And then I have to work with something that I am not doing, which is using technology, synthetic technology to develop my powers. That's what this technocrat character that I made has to do. So he has to act in certain ways. He's kind of an atheist, right? The technocracy kind of works around that atheist materialist way because they're hysterical because they're ignorant of the very magic that they're using. It's great.
Yeah. And on top of that, like they're the great thing about White Wolf, their games, they have the propensity to go places.
A minute and a half, by the way, so I want to give you a chance to promote yourself.
Okay, so what I loved about the White Wolf games was that there was so much potential there, and then it kind of fell flat. My alternative to White Wolf or whoever the hell owns Vampire the Masquerade these days, I would say leave that one on the shelf. Night Shift Veterans of the Supernatural Wars is a much better game in my opinion.
And that's a neat title. That's got my attention. Link me that. I want to throw it to my guy.
I will. There are 2 books that will be absolutely essential. They're the core book and then the Night Companion. I would recommend having those 2 books. Also, Wasted Lands by the same company, Elflair Games, is an interesting new take on fantasy. So I don't buy any new fantasy games unless they have something new and interesting to offer. And that one, I've said this during my promos, you can take your character from Wasted Lands, should they survive the campaign there, and then whip it right over into Night Shift. Because in Wasted Lands, you're essentially doing deeds that, through a weird game of telephone, through history, make you a god.
Interesting. So, okay. All right. Promote yourself. Music just kicked in.
All right. Name's Raven Wulfgar. You can check me out on my YouTube channel. We will be live streaming every other Saturday through YouTube, Cloud Hub, Rumble, and Odyssey. Also Twitter and hopefully a couple other platforms as well. We're going to try that on the 19th. We'll have Alex Reinhardt on for his game Cyber Rats. I hope to see you there.
Excellent. Thank you. Good night.
Censorship and regulation is becoming an ever